Hello everyone, welcome to this message. As our first card today, we have the Ecstasis card, and then the next two cards are the Oakman and Solace. So let's see. And the overall energy is illness and pets. So again, this relates to pests lately. And then the card of vulnerability as well. So let's see. Yeah. So it's kind of bizarre because she seems to be looking at a concrete wall pretty much, and there are even like cracks in them as well, which is kind of fascinating because it makes me think about I made a cement flower pot, and like there were like these cracks that happened because it didn't dry long enough. So which is kind of interesting because it didn't dry long enough. So maybe it has something to do with, like, for example, I'm like creating products, right? Actually want to call it different, but I don't know another word. I'm creating creations, just call it that. So I'm creating creations that I'm being divinely inspired to create. And so it could have something to do with the flaws, for example, in something, the vulnerabilities in something, perhaps. So it could have something to do with that. And then you have pests that go with that. So that's fascinating. And like I don't know if that means something, but like my father also pointed to that, right? You do realize that there are cracks in this flower pot, right? So I said, like, yes, I know, and I've let go of making flower pots. I'm just not doing that again. Maybe in the future, ever, like not in terms of, yeah. So let's see. So maybe it has something to do with people commenting or things happening, so you would give up. Perhaps that there's a pest of that that people are commenting on things, so you would give up. That I think that's what it is. There's a pest like that happening in your life. And like today, I showed my father the candle, and he was he didn't even, it wasn't criticism or anything. Like he was just thinking about that he wants. He said like that doesn't really. That actually, if it's not like completely smooth, it actually looks more like honey. So it's kind of like he actually liked that, right? And I liked it as well. And so yeah, he didn't really see that would be an issue, and he just randomly said also not realizing what he was saying, right? He was saying that he once had this candle and like it started melting because it was so hot, right? And I said, well, that's actually quite relevant because the day that we're going, it might be quite hot, right? Because it has been hot 2 years in a row as you went to that market. So that may be important. Well, I looked today so my father didn't realize that it was like criticism that wasn't really like even more cracks in the foundation or whatever, even more cracks in the material or something, the vulnerabilities in the material. So it could talk about that, right? So it's kind of relevant because it happened today and it connects to this card. And yeah, so I just looked at the candle I made some time ago. Like, I hopefully, like, it's not going to be that a product, like a material comes from China to test something out and it's actually better in terms of material than what I purchased in terms of with a certificate here. That would be horrible if that would be the case. But like, that candle at least has been standing there the entire time. It's also made of soy wax, right? And it's been standing there the entire time in like my office space, which is like like extremely, it's like a sauna pretty much, right? The bathroom is even worse, but like it's bad. So yeah. So in that sense, that didn't melt. So I'm probably don't have to worry. But it was like for just to be sure, I'm going to take that candle and just place it in that really hot room. Maybe it's a good thing. Like at first I was thinking like, it's kind of annoying because you want to test the candles and like it's actually too hot. It's like a heat wave right now to test these things and like other things as well that you like do bake things like bake clay, for example. Like you can't really do that in weather like this. So it's kind of annoying in a sense, but in another sense I was like, this is actually the ideal perfect moment to see if that candle would actually melt or not with this premium candle wax, right? That should be better, but that's not always the case, I have learned. So let's see. So it's good to know that, right? So, but it does relate to that. There's something here about ecstasis is a card of like that you get back on your feet um, after you've pulled something off that was quite impossible, for example, right? So you're back on your feet and like maybe you are ready to present something, right? So maybe you're at that point where you are ready to present something. Or maybe it could even talk about that. It literally could talk about this moment where I literally presented the candle to my father, right? And so it could be talking about that. So let's just see what this is going to be about. So it could be a message like for my personal life, also relating to other people's lives. So let's see. And then you have the Oakman. So let's see. Yeah. The Oakman. Stasis and the Oakman. So there's something about that you are presenting something to someone else. And this could be a card of receiving something. So maybe it could be that my father received something because it can talk about telepathic communication or like any kind of communication that is to be called spiritual, right? So because it like literally came out of nowhere, right? Like he was not intending to criticize me or anything, like quite the contrary actually. And like also before when I was talking about those tariffs and such, that my father also said like it can't possibly be that that's like €3 a product. I'm like no, because like your mom said that that would be the case, but I can't believe that. So he also found it quite over the top, right? So I'm saying, and I told my father like no, that's actually what's happening. So he was also quite astonished. So it was actually quite supportive, right? So and which I also received through the cards that would be changing, right? That we're in another chapter right now, and so I did notice that, and so this is about like presenting something, and then this person hears something, right? So in my case, this would be like my father hears something, and it's very interesting because it's coming from the light. So so I do think that this could be quite literally God giving a message to my father because it's important that I know this, right? So could be the case, right? So let's see, because there's something about receiving and the divine, right? So yeah. So he also didn't know where that was coming from, right? It also to him was like, oh, I just said that, and oh, I didn't know that that would be causing difficulties for you, right? So and then potentially, and then there is the singer of the chalice. So let's see. Singer of the chalice has to do with pouring in of grace. It could also be sometimes. Could be grace, perhaps in this case. Could be an act of grace. And then you have the piper. So there's something about a calling. It's kind of fascinating. Well, you could see it as a subconscious hallways as well, or you could see it as grace. And then you have the Dark Lady again, which is kind of weird that it's here right now. I think it means something else, quite likely. I don't think it is suppression like it has signified for some time now. So let's see. Are you being called into something that is kind of like, well, suppressive? You could also call it like going down or something, right? So it could be that you could see it as her more like suppressing in a sense, like pushing into subconscious hallways, right? So there could be something about, and this is like your divine calling. So it could be, if you would see it as a trigger, but that's not really what it is. But it's just like kind of like shadow work, but then in a good way, like in a different kind of way, I would say. Just like you would go into shadow work and like really contemplate something, but this is more like grace helping you to contemplate something that you may need to know, right? So I do think you want to see it like that this time. So you are back on your feet. You're back on your feet. Kind of like good to go, back on your feet, ready to present something to the world, perhaps, right? Maybe it is ready. It could be that, right? Maybe it is ready to be presented to the world. And then it's kind of like these cards seem to connect somehow. These cards are connecting. As though it would be underneath this card. Again, I have that feeling. Like this is underneath this card. So there's something about that you're ready to present something to the world. But this is like, makes me think about grace. Grace happening in your subconscious hallways. But whatever is underneath something. There's grace happening there. You could see it perhaps as grace showing you what you need to look at, perhaps. You could see it like that. Or it could just be, I'm just going to go for that for now. And then you have the Oakman. So someone, like in my case, like my father receiving, it's a calling. You could see that a call, right? Receiving a call, receiving a calling. So that I do think that God wants to say, like, that my father received a call from God, pretty much, right? Received a calling, a call and a calling. And then you have, like, also this is a card of the, you could see it as a card of the Father in and of itself, perhaps, right? Like light, God, Jesus. And this, like, if you would see God as the Father in this case, look at it a little bit creatively. It could be that your father, it's kind of fascinating, right? Like your father, like received, but it's also kind of like your father in heaven, like, yeah. There's something about that. Let's see. So father, and then we have the Dark Lady, which is very fascinating in this case. Also in the camera, it looks kind of like she's wearing a hood or something, like a hood. It's kind of fast. It's almost like these cards want to go together. I felt that with this other card too, so I might want to look at that. So there's something here, but it's as though she's wearing a hood, and there's something divine about that, right? as though your mind would be cloaked or something. I did notice that, like it definitely didn't get to me at all. Like I was very happy to know that. So you could see that perhaps as like a cloaking by God. So maybe God is also talking about that, about like that God is like cloaking your mind, like protecting your mind and making sure that your mind is really, really light. So if you are like, my mind is so joyful, so positive, so optimistic, so high vibrational, so light, right? Then that's actually God. It's God, God causing that. I wonder what this means then. It makes me think that these look like they go together. It's almost like this card like wants to go over here, right? Like, yeah, like that. So let's see. Then it kind of mirrors this too in this card. So you are ready to present something, and this looks to me like a something like a trophy in the camera. A trophy. You've landed back on your feet, which is a trophy. Well, that makes sense. That's what I was sensing. So now it makes much more sense, this message. It feels like because it feels like a victory. I very much felt that it was a victory that yeah. So maybe God wants to acknowledge um, like you've landed on your feet, you're good to go, you're ready to present something. And that is a victory, because it does look like a trophy. It's a victory. It's a victory, but the question is, why are these subconscious always in both cards? You're ready to present something, and it's a victory. These also like connect somehow. Yeah, it seems like his beard is a little bit here as well. These cards seem to connect too. Okay. So it's almost like also like underground in the roots. The calling is in the roots. So this is going to be a fascinating message. A little bit of a riddle too. The calling is in the roots. The roots is a little bit like underground again. Calling. And then we have, as the underlying energy, we have the singer of connection. So you're making you're like connecting the dots, right? Connecting the dots, but you can also sometimes talk about like you and God, like a bridge between heaven and earth, right? You and God. And successfully making that connection. Now we have social pressure. Social pressure in terms of like that you don't want, that you want to do what is good for you. You want to make a healthy choice, right? The choice that won't have consequences for you. Want to do something that is good for you, pretty much, for your own welfare. And this is like a social pressure against that, I guess. And then you have abuse. So the abuse of social pressure, or social pressure was abusing you. Social pressure was abusing you. It was quite toxic, quite literally. And then as the cards that just lay at the bottom, you have Geo the Slow, who is observing like an outsider. You have mindfulness, so maybe he is looking at the world from a very mindful place, and he's also in isolation. He's looking at the world from a mindful place and from a place of isolation. Let's just see what the book and Bible and everything is going to say, because here we go towards I actually am drawn to this is 1 Kings 22 verse 13. That's actually what I'm being drawn to, which starts with the messenger. So I'm like going in the middle of of this part of the Bible. So let's just see. The messenger who had gone to summon Micaiah said to him, "Look, the other prophets without exception are predicting success for the king." Okay. The other prophets without exception are predicting success for the king. Let your word agree with theirs and speak favorably. But Micaiah said, "As surely as the Lord lives, I can tell him only what the Lord tells me." I can tell him only what the Lord tells me. That's kind of fascinating too. When he arrived, the king asked him, "Micaiah, shall we go to war against Ramoth Gilead or not? Attack and be victorious," he answered. Victorious? It's also kind of fascinating. Attack and be victorious. So I was attacked by Satan, right? And like I was victorious. I do feel like that's a victory. Attack and be victorious, he answered, for the Lord will give it into the king's hand. Into the king's hand. It's like granting you. Now it's becoming more interesting. It's kind of like God is granting you your victory. That's what this is. God is granting you your victory. The king said to him, "How many times must I make you swear to tell me nothing but the truth in the name of the Lord?" Tell me nothing but the truth in the name of the Lord. Then Micaiah answered, I saw all Israel scattered on the hills like sheep without a shepherd. And the Lord said, "These people have no master. Let each one go home in peace." The king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "Didn't I tell you that he never prophesies anything good about me, but only bad?" That's also interesting. It's kind of like criticism, right? Like the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "Didn't I tell you that he never prophesies anything good about me, but only bad?" So only bad prophecies, right? Never good prophecies. But God, it's kind of like people criticizing you, but it's also like Satan's prophecies are always bad as it concerns you. But like God is like handing you the victory over the attack. So that's interesting. Micaiah continued, "Therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne with all the multitudes of heaven standing around him on his right and on his left." Which makes me feel like those are the angels. And the Lord said, "Who will entice Ahab into attacking Ramoth Gilead and going to his death there?" One suggested this and another that. Finally a spirit came forward, stood before the Lord and said, "I will entice him." "By what means?" the Lord asked. "I will go out and be a deceiving spirit in the mouths of all his prophets," he said. "You will succeed in enticing him," said the Lord. "Go and do it." Okay, weird. So now the Lord has put a deceiving spirit in the mouths of all these prophets of yours. The Lord has decreed disaster for you. Then Zedekiah, son of Kenana, went up and slapped Micaiah in the face. "Which way did the Spirit from the Lord go when he went from me to speak to you?" Which way did the Spirit from the Lord go when he went from me to speak to you? When he went from me to speak to you. So there is something here about went from me to speak to you, right? So I do think like God, that came from God, and he spoke through my father, I think. So let's see. Micaiah replied, "You will find out on the day you go." Oh, that's also interesting. Micaiah replied, "You will find out on the day you go to hide in an inner room." Isolation, right? The day you go out to hide in an inner room. The king of Israel then ordered, "Take Micaiah and send him back to Amon, the ruler of the city, and to Joash, the king's son, and say, 'This is what the king says. Put this fellow in prison and give him nothing but bread and water until I return safely.'" Micaiah declared, "If you ever return safely, the Lord has not spoken through me." Then he added, "Mark my words, all you people." Okay, that's what I actually feel I should stop. If you ever return safely, the Lord has not spoken through me. Then he added, "Mark my words, all you people." So there is something about God speaking through people or not speaking through people. He's declared victory. Okay, let's see. The queen said that she knew me, that she once saw me on the city wall. So kind of like that she once saw me around the edges of the city, right? Where I had run away to and had abandoned Tried. Tried makes me think about a city in the Bible, but I don't know which city that is. But it sounds similar. Tyre. Makes me think about Tyre for some reason. And I don't know what that talks about. So, where I went, where I had run away to and had abandoned Tried, which makes me think about where I had abandoned Tyre, and that she had read my or and or, but that she had not understood it. Upon which I said, "Your Majesty understands it. Your Majesty understands that this for me is the very worst, but it is a remarkable situation." Christian 8 had just like me immediately heard the mistake, or and or, because in a surprised manner, I heard the queen say what the seamstresses and that sort of people are saying. The look of the king fell upon me, and I avoided it. Then we talked some more, and then the king said to the queen, "Is Juliana alone with you?" Upon which she said yes, and she went away. I spoke some further with the king. He asked me if I was intending to go on a trip this year. I answered that if that opportunity would present itself to me, that it would probably be a short trip to Berlin. There you have much more interesting acquaintances. No, Majesty, in Berlin I live totally isolated and I work even harder. Fascinating, right? I live totally isolated and I work even harder. But then you can just as well come with me to Smorm over. And he smiled. He smiled at his own wittiness. "No, Majesty, whether I would go to Smorm over or to Smorm Nedere." Nedere means, I think, lower, right? So, so I do think that it's like a city name, that there is an upper and a lower part of that city. So it's kind of interesting, right? Upper, lower. So whether you go to the upper part or the lower part of the city, an incognito, a refuge, like a hiding place, with 400,000 people. That I don't get. Like that you don't get in terms of like receiving. That was something annoying, upon which he said, yes, you are completely right in that. Then he asked me about Schelling. I tried to give him an impression in a couple of words. Then he asked about Schelling's personal views as it comes to the court. What kind of a status he had at university. I said that it was with Schelling as it was with Rijn, and where he came from, probably his roots, I think is what it means. It became still standing water, so he bled to death in his function for the Royal Prussian excellence. Bled to death in his function for the Royal Prussian excellence. After that, I said something about the Hegelian philosophy that had first been the philosophy of the government, and it seems that it would now become Schelling's philosophy that would be the philosophy of the government. So maybe something's going to change in the government, right? It could be, maybe God wants to say like, I declare victory, and maybe something is going to change in the government. Could be the case. Just like God was speaking through my father, right? So it's kind of like if God wants to change something, God will change something. I was thinking about that, like maybe that law can just be, like that whole regulation can just, I just said, right, like today, like who knows, right? Maybe this whole regulation will be annulled and it just won't happen. It's possible, right? Because it's just a temporary measure. So they're just trying things out. So maybe it can change. So it could perhaps talk about that. Maybe the philosophy of the government is going to change. So maybe things can actually be reversed. Who knows, right? So let's see. She had not understood what I had said. No. That she had not understood, upon which I said, Your Majesty understands that this would have been the worst for me. It was just like immediately hearing a mistake, right? So I do think that my father also immediately heard the mistake. Kind of weird, right? Because I do think it is talking about that God is speaking to my father, and that it was kind of like, because he immediately understood the mistake, right? Like he said something and like he didn't realize it was criticism. So there was something peculiar happening here. So I do think that God was speaking to my father pretty much. I think that this whole message is to say that, because he was like, oh, I said something wrong, right? And he had not understood that he had said something wrong, so it just came through him, right? Which is kind of like a message here. Incognito into a hiding place with 400,000 people, which makes me think about like the 44,000 kind of, right? 440,000 chosen ones on earth. So it's close to that number, I guess. Incognito into a hiding place with perhaps all of the chosen ones. I live totally isolated and I work even harder. So maybe you're going to be going into isolation soon. Going to be going into isolation soon. And there's most definitely here in the Bible also something about speaking true, right? Lord has spoken through you. And like, you see it in how he saw it as a mistake. Something to do with that. So it's very interesting. So so I'm wishing you a very beautiful day ahead, and bye bye.